For this bracelet, a franchise bracelet for you and your Greyhound, you need a standard paracord, a ring, stainless steel, some thread, which is hem thread or a smaller paracord, scissors, a chopstick, and a lighter and a darning needle with a blunt edge. Cut off 5 meters of your paracord and find the middle of the paracord and thread it through the stainless steel ring. Then you measure the length of the neck of your Greyhound, which is roughly about 38 centimeters, and measure the same, including the ring, at your project, and then hold the other end of the paracord firmly where you have measured it, pinch it to the ring, and thread it through the ring. So you have both ends secured, and this is the actual size of the collar or the friendship bracelet that you do for your Greyhound. So if you're unsure, go ahead and measure it again, and then pinch the open end close to the ring so you are not accidentally changing the size. Now the actual collar length is inside the two cords, and make sure they are not twisted. And you start with the first knot, which is a Solomon knot. You take the left side over both middle strings and the right side under the both middle strings and thread it through the loop so you can actually tie it and fasten it. Tie and fasten it really close to the ring. This is the only really tricky part that you have. When just make sure that the beginning is right, and then measure again if you want to. If you're unsure the size, you can slip it over the neck of your Greyhound. Make sure it's not too tight, but also not too loose. It should be really snug and just slide over the head of your Greyhound. Now you thread the other way around. So now the left thread goes under and the right thread goes over, and you loop the left thread through the right. Now you have the first Solomon knot, and as you can see, and that is an important piece of information, the knot is on the left side. You see there, that is the knot, and that is on the left side. Now you have to abide just one rule when you braid this one. You always have to take the string that comes out of the knot on top of the center pieces, always on top, and then obviously the other one on below, and then thread it through. So you have a loop and you can tie it, and that's a knot. And now you can see the knot move to the other side. So now it's on the right side. Now what we have learned is we put the string that comes out of the loop on top and the other one on the bottom. And then you tie it and you fasten it. So it won't take you long, and you get this the hang of it, and you go into this beautiful swing of knotting, which is really meditative. And in this manner you knot away, always making sure you are not twisting. You would twist the knot if you are not putting the string that comes out of the knot on top, but rather on the bottom. Then you will see the pattern doesn't form, and there's a slight twist in it. So you do have to undo this one and redo it and do it right way. The whole collar, especially with the embroidery, would not work if that would be the other way around. Now you come to the end of your project, and there's just probably 2 or 3 more knots possible. Now here you can actually tighten everything up and make it really nice and tight by pushing the knots to the beginning. First of all, you check if you have not made a mistake. So this is all looking good. The knots are all in the right place. And then you push it towards the beginning and see how much more space you have created to put a lot of more knots in. And that's what you do. You knot till the end. Always making sure the knots are even tensioned, not too tight, not too loose. And when it comes to the very end, it's a little bit more tricky, but not a big challenge. Just squeeze one more knot in there. And oops, that was the wrong one. So you undo it, do the right one, and cut off once it's really tightly knotted. Cut off the end very close with a sharp scissors. And you don't need to worry that it comes undone, because we're gonna take the lighter to it and singe the end, which means the plastic that this paracord consists of is melting, and through melting it becomes it's sticky and glues into the collar. We do the same on the other side. And with the metal end of your lighter or your metal scissors, don't use any plastic, you can also press the melted end of the paracord in, which makes a very smooth and almost invisible end. And here you have it. The first part of your franchise bracelet for you and your Greyhound is finished, as it is. You can use it like this or stay tuned for the embroidery project. Now we want to do the bracelet for the human. What you need is the same paracord. You cut roughly 2.5 meters of it and start by singeing the ends in this case and flatten them. The reason for that is that later on we need the ends to thread through a rather small loops, and it helps tremendously if the ends of your paracord are already prepared, so they do not fray and they are nice and flat, so they can fit through the smallest loops. As always, use some metal to melt down and press down the melted plastic, otherwise other plastic would melt into it. So here we do the same. We find the middle of the paracord, wrap it around your wrist, and all the way around. You want a full wrap, and then mark the other end of the paracord where your wrist ends, and pinch there. This is your marker, and then fold it over. Now you have a centerpiece, that is the actual length of your bracelet, and you have the outer strings which we use for knotting. And we do the same Solomon knot as for the collar for the Greyhound. You just pinch and hold it firmly and start with the right one on top of the centerpieces, and the left one goes below the centerpieces and loops through. Always make sure you're not losing your pinch. It's just the first knot that you need to be very careful with. This makes the project a success. So if it doesn't happen the first time, don't be disencouraged. Just do it again and again until you are happy with the first knot. Here you can see that it forms two loops, which we want to expose a little bit more, because we need these loops for our fastener later on. Now we start to our Solomon knotting. We start where the knot is on the left hand side, and we put the left string over the center pieces and the right string under. Pull it tight to create our first Solomon knot. And same as with the dog collar, the knot is always wandering from left to right and from right to left. So you can see here we have already created a knot on the right side. Make sure you are not tightening too fast your loops, so you rather pull them out a little bit. Measure it again, and as you can see there's a little gap, which is totally fine. You need a bit of a gap for your closure. You don't want your bracelet to go all the way from one end of the wrist to the other. Now we are taking the right string over the center pieces, because that's where the knot is, and the knot wanders to the left, so we take the left string over and the right string under and knot. Here you go. That's your Solomon knot. By now you know very well how to knot it, and that would be much fun and not much of a challenge. Just make sure you're not twisting the knot. So you always check where the last knot is and use the string that comes out there to go on top of your center pieces. Once you have done a row of knots, you will see it goes quite quickly, and you come to the end where it becomes a little bit tight. You need to be aware that you need the little loop on the bottom of your bracelet still. So you don't want to completely knot over it. Just leave a little loop there. You can tighten up your bracelet a little bit without closing the upper loops. And yep, there fits just one more knot. And then we start to secure the bracelet after we checked that we got every knot in place and not one knot is twisted. And then you have your strings, and here comes the chopstick into play. With the chopstick you widen the hole on the bottom, and then you take the string that comes on top out of the bracelet through the bottom of the hole, so the opposite way, and then you do exactly the same one with the one that comes out of your knot, which has to go from the top down through the same hole. So you open up the hole a little bit more with the chopstick and thread it through, and it might get stuck there, which because it's quite tight, so you can use your chopstick and squeeze it through. The chopstick is an awesome awesome tool. I use it all the time when I do craft thingies. And then you pull the string through the loop and tighten it, and you have a nice secure knot on the bottom of your bracelet. The next step is to create the closure. To create the closure, we need to thread through both loose strings through the loops we have created at the very beginning. So you take the right string and loop it through the right loop, and the left string to loop it through the left loop. As well, here the chopstick comes in handy. Make a hole, thread it through. That should go quite easy. And then do the same on the other side, just making sure that your strings are not twisting. They should be parallel to each other. Once you have put your string through the loop, you can already see how the fastening goes. This is how you close it and open it, so you can slip it over your hand and tighten it up at your wrist. The only thing we now need to do is to tighten the upper loops a little bit more, so they are actually holding the strings in place, and then make an end knot so the strings are not slipping out when you use your bracelet. Now the next step is that you find out the proper length. So you pinch with your thumb where the largest part of your hand is, and then start to make the end knot by doing 2 loops, and put the right string over the top of the center and the left string under the center. And now you want to go back into the same loop where the string comes from. So with the lower one, you go up on top and through the same loop he came from, which was the left side. And with the right string, who is now facing the left, you go under and through the right loop. This looks a little bit chaotic, but it all makes sense once you tighten up the knot. It becomes a nice and decorative and safe knot to secure your fastener. Both strings need to have the same length, so here you make a little bit of an adjustment if one is too long by pulling in the slack of this cord. And once you get to know your knot a little bit better, you also know where to find the right end to actually fasten the knot and taking out any excess string. Before you cut the ends, just make sure you're happy with the size of your bracelet and the way it slips over your hand and the way it tightens up at your wrist. So when everything has the right dimensions, you can go and cut the excess paracord the same way we did with the collar. So you cut it really tight towards the knot with the sharp scissors and take your lighter and cinch the ends and press the melted ends quickly as long as they are still hot in with the metal part of your lighter. This will create a nice and smooth end and also is almost invisible. And the last thing you need to do is to adjust the loops to make them tighter, so the string, the fastener, doesn't slip out. What you do is you pull your whole bracelet towards the small loops until they become really tight, and you can see you can fasten it and it stays actually there. And that's exactly what you want. So now it's nice and snug, and you can repeat that anytime your bracelet seems to get a little bit loose. And then you just tuck the ends under if you don't want them to stick out. And you have your bracelet finished. Yay! So you and your Greyhound have a beautiful matching bracelet, or aka collar. And the ring of the collar can accommodate the name tag and the cousil tag of your Greyhound. And the good thing is, if you have something like that, you don't need to have this thick martingale collar on your Greyhound all the time. When you go at home, then you can take the martingale off and have this lovely bracelet. Now the next part is, if you want to go further and make some decorative embroidery, to do this lovely hearts on the bracelet and on the collar. What you need for that is you need some hemp string that I have used, or some really small paracord if you can source them, and thread it through a darning needle or a tapestry needle which has a very blunt end. I used for the bracelets around about 1.5 meters of the hemp. To make the heart, you're never going through the paracord, only through the holes that has been created through knotting. And you start at one end and do the top part of your heart by going through the top loops. A heart has two half round shapes on the top, so that's exactly what we are creating first, the two half round shapes there. And then you hold just the end of your string so you can weave it in later. And once the top part of the heart is done, you find the opposite, on the opposite side, the next loop, which is in the center of the two half rounds, and thread through there from back to front, and then go into the beginning of the first half round of your heart and thread it through, and then go to the other end of your half round of, I don't know how do you call this, top of a heart, this half round shape, come through there and go back to the pointed edge end of your heart, and that's your first heart done. Ta-ra, ta-ra, beautiful. Now you want to stick with the next heart close, so you go in the next possible hole next to the pointed edge of your heart and start to do your two half round shapes for the beginning of the next heart there. Same way you did it at the other side. Nothing's changing. You just make sure that you always start at the first half round and always end at the peak or the pointed edge, a pointed part of the heart. That's all you need to remember. And then you are not using too much string, and also the opposite side of your bracelet looks kind of organized and tidy and not so wild. And soon you will see you have finished your second heart, and then you know how this pattern comes to pass and how everything forms. go ahead and continue in this established pattern until you come to the end of your bracelet. At the end of your bracelet, you just make sure that the hearts are all in the correct order, and this is how the back side looks. You have maybe thread in the beginning of the thread already while you were embroidering, or do it now. You definitely have to secure now the end of your embroidery thread. You can also find at the beginning and make a knot there, a simple knot, and secure it in this way. If you have a smaller project like this bracelet, if you are embroidering the collar of the dog, that's not an option, so you would have to secure both ends with some knots at the beginning and at the end of the project. Now this is hem, so you just cut it off with the scissors, no need to singe it. You can't even do it because it's a natural product, it won't melt, and but it will be fine, it won't fray too much. So cut that off there, and here you have your bracelet. That is for the human, and then you have the matching piece for your dog. Yay! And for the lovely dog design, you can have your name tag there and also choose other designs as you please. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more crafty how-to videos.